Well, I think most people that do drugs and alcohol, I think probably it's because they have craniofacial dystrophy. I know that's kind of a stretch. I know people would say it's probably caused by something else. But you become incredibly impulsive once your prefrontal cortex shuts down. I think there was a case, what I've learned at an interesting YouTube video on it, there was this railroad worker, it was an interesting case study. He had like a freaking rod like go through his like face, or his prefrontal cortex basically, and he survived. But his attending physician was like, the balance between his intellectual faculties and his animal instincts has been thrown out of balance. And before he had like an iron will, and now he became very irritable. He went to whorehouses and stuff like that, in and out of prison. So, and that the same thing happens if you're mouth breathing and not getting enough sleep. Your prefrontal cortex shuts down.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think he's the only railroad worker who ever went to a whorehouse, though.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe he was doing that before. Can you blame the guy?
Work hard, play hard, bro.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, this is an interesting study from... do you know Matthew Walker? He did an interview with Joe Rogan. He's like a sleep scientist.
Yeah, he's the British sleep guy, right?
Yeah, and like
he's the man. I love that guy. I could listen to that guy for hours. He also did a really good one with Andrew Huberman.
Oh, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, check that out.
But he said 60% greater magnitude in amygdala activation in people that are sleep deprived. So your amygdala hyperactivates when you're sleep deprived, and what happens when your amygdala is overactivated, it actually shuts down your prefrontal cortex. I think I already said this. So that's why a lot of people are walking around like constantly anxious, because their amygdala is just in overdrive, and that's the emotional center of your brain, and your prefrontal cortex is supposed to keep that in check and keep your emotions in check, and a lot of people don't have that. Mm-hmm. If they're constantly sleep deprived, which I think 80% of the population are, based on Dr. Derek Mahoney's study. So I think it's generally accepted that 30% of people have sleep apnea, and like about 90% of those people have untreated sleep apnea, which is horrible. But he also measured a bunch of people with malocclusion, and he found that 92% of people with malocclusion have sleep disordered breathing when you count UARS, which is upper airway resistance syndrome. So you're not actually choking when you're sleeping. It's not an apnea, but you're still waking up from REM sleep, basically. So 92% of people with malocclusion have that. About 90% of people in the world have malocclusion, which is crazy, right? So
yeah, that's
90%
insane,
of 90% is 80%, you know?
Wow.
So I think that's pretty reasonable to say. It's very widespread.
That's terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and your point about the prefrontal cortex, if you just think about how much everyone is running around now chasing cheap dopamine, right? Like everyone needs that quick fix now. Whether it's Adderall, which is like, a dopaminergic drug, all stimulants are dopaminergic, which is to say like they feed that need for like instant gratification. Otherwise your mind is just so scattered that you're unable to do anything or sit still, because your mind just needs something to feed on.
Yeah. My friend at my construction job was saying the same thing. He had a divorce, and he got raked over the coals in divorce courts, and so he started using dope basically. And he said, my grandma might give me shit for using dope, but everybody's on something. My grandma's on Vicodin or OxyContin, so everyone's just drugged up now. I think 3.3 million American kids now are medicated for ADHD, and they're taking amphetamines for it. Yeah. So that's crazy. And I mean, think about how much pharmaceutical companies are profiting off that.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And well, besides that, I mean, think about all the anguish that these kids are suffering. I mean, ADHD isn't like some like wonderful disease where like, I don't think it's genetic at all. I don't think there's any benefit to it. I don't think there's any positive to ADHD. So I don't think it's like some like genetic mutation, and some people just have different brains that work better in different situations. I think having a very distracted mind isn't good. I don't think a person with ADHD would survive at all in Paleolithic times. In my opinion, I think it's probably entirely, environmental. And probably most of it's caused by sleep deprivation and amygdala overactive activation, which causes people to be more impulsive. And sleep-deprived children are actually hyperactive. But these doctors are like, well, let's just give them amphetamines. It must be genetic, right? I don't really buy that.
Yeah, I'm not sure I buy it too, and I think the whole thing is exacerbated by screens too, right? Because if your attention was already shit before, and now you get a kid addicted to, high fructose media on an iPad or on a phone, it's over after that.